So welcome again. So when there is change management implementation happening, it's always strategized. Okay, it cannot happen independent. You have to strategize. You have to plan it much ahead in time, right? And it is done with a series of steps which are goal prone. You have to give goals to each step, and because it requires several other elements to come into existence. So a strategy is typically adopted to make that change happen. Okay. Now the industry has about 7 main or largely popular, if you will, strategies that exist out there as a model. Okay. Some of them are mentioned over there. The 8th one is what we, Soul and I particularly have copywritten into. It's called the 3M model or the 3M strategy. Okay. Now for each of these, right, the details, this is in the public domain, so I will not get into details of what each of them do and what of them, what are the pros and cons. You can also read Changelization to get even very specific details onto each of those. But I will leave it for you to get into details in case you have to, right? I will go deeper into the 3M strategy. Why? Because we find that to be a little more universal compared to the others, right? And there are pros and cons. With that said, strategy is a very important element for change management, and once you put the strategy in place, there's a framework that comes into existence because of the change, because there are key levers which are moving and always churning around. The transformation, in fact the change transformation that exists, that requires a better strategy, right? Because change is small and the series of changes is a transformation. Each of these strategies that you apply requires a structure, right? And structure is formulated by the virtue of putting people in place who are responsible for key tasks within the strategy of change management. Okay, and each of them deal with a specific role and have a KPI, that is a key performance index to themselves for this, which they are measured upon. Okay, that is the seriousness of change management. Now, because we are going to talk about 3M strategy in detail, you have to understand what sort of structures typically come into existence because of these change management activities. Okay. Now you see there are 3 layers mentioned over there. There's a strategy layer, a planning and execution layer, and the execution below. Okay. Now such structures work in a transformation related environment, right? For small changes, you don't require as extraneous a kind of structure like this, but this is more so from a large transformation that one organization goes through, and there's a churn happening repeatedly. Okay, so for example, a strategy and planning layer, this is the topmost layer which plans the whole strategy through, right, of adoption, of what technology adoption and what cycles are going to come into play. Based on that, which cycle comes for the human changes. So which teams will be doing first and the second one and the third one and so on and so forth. After that, how is the adoption going to take place? And so how is the continuous improvement? Now each of them has a framework it works upon, which we'll go into deeper details in the subsequent one. Now at that level, when the transformation and activity is happening, so of course you require experience in a senior person. So that in the whole change structure is the most senior person responsible as the highest stakeholder. Okay, and responsible for the change. The planning and execution layer is where the 2 layers, that is execution and the planning layers, come together. But the planning is domain in this layer affects or helps or supports the strategy layer, which is dwelled by the highest office, right? But the planning exercise typically consists of various heads who are also key responsible people for the subsequent execution of that stream of activity. Okay, which they plan along with the strategy layer to ensure the practicality of that execution. Right? So objectives are given by strategy and planning. The practicality of implementing comes from the planning layer in details, and the execution happens by the execution layer. Okay, there are certain names given, there are typical heads given, typically used for such scenarios, right? As much as a chief change officer, if you will, is used for transformation activities. Like, so guys understand, this is the seriousness of that change management. Okay. Then for planning, there's communication, then there is governance, there's grievance, there's transition, and there's also PMO office. All right. followed by the change manager as change management at the respective layers, and then change agents. Okay, so that's the lastmost layer which goes on the ground and executes. Okay, each of them have KPIs, each of them comes with a KRA, that is key result areas, and it's part of their compensation system. Okay, so this is used as a general formulation, as a structure to execute the strategy which has been devised as part of the planning for the larger objective. We mentioned the 3 tenets. This is what they come with, and then they try to dwell deeper into it based on the levels. Now they might use multitude of different changes, right? We talk about planned, incremental, development, and all that. They at various times they might use those interleavingly with each other and holistically form the larger transformation. Okay, so the structure plays an important role in any execution. Okay, now with this we'll jump into the 3M strategy. Okay, what does it mean and what inculcates during that process? Some of you from RISE would have seen that, right, where we introduced tip, top, and so on, right? So I will be talking that, and also so that you understand, tip, top, and SOM, the 3 names, and that structure resides on the top, the strategy and planning layer, because those are the key planners and strategists for activating a transformation activity throughout the organization. Okay, and let's go into deeper details of how they do it. All right, I'll jump in and see you there in the change, governance, and how it takes place in terms of strategy.